Hello, everybody. Cal Griffin. Disclaimer: any hot button topics, political ideology, religious, or they're the such that does not go along with this conversation, one will be steered back towards the conversation, and if that is not respected, you will be promptly locked out of the room without warning. So, and if you have a problem with that, don't join in. If you do, abide. So, and I'm sure there's something else to go along with that disclaimer. But anyway, something that came to mind based on a podcast debate that stirred my interest. Okay. And it is also with a recent event of an ongoing interaction with somebody else in the Jedi community, where a question came up in this debate I saw is morals versus principles. Okay. Morally, we generally make judgments on what our morals are. Okay. And what we believe within our own morals, what we believe to be right and wrong based on what somebody does and how we should correspond, how we should issue consequences, right? For how we should react to solve a problem based on what our morals are and what we believe as right and wrong. Now, principles are what is the truth. What is the truth of the matter? So, what we may confuse as actual right and wrong as a principle, we may be using our morals to make that judgment and say it's based on principles. And actually, what we should be doing to react or act on things are principles, the truth of what should be done, and the truth of what is causing the problem, and how we should deal with that problem by principles. Okay. And I think and believe by what I'm seeing by examples that people are having people and want people to follow what they do and say based on individual morals. In other words, if your morals align with mine, then we are on the same page.
And
if they do not align,
that is
sorry?
highly individually based. So everyone has different beliefs, so everyone's going to have slightly different morals, but the principles remain consistent. So an expectation that everyone should believe the same thing that we do about something, have the same morals, isn't, it's an opinion.
No, an opinion is an unfounded, an unfactual perspective and perception. Okay. And what we think, which could be moral based. Okay. However, does that go on principles? This goes back to the conversation and a cast I had a while back on objectivity versus subjectivity. Objective versus subjective. Okay? Objective would be what our principles would be. Should our principles, the truth. Subject is what our morals and opinions. And how we decide based on our morals and our opinions from our morals versus principles and the objective truth. Factual. Morals are what we were raised with, what we were raised to believe, how to believe, what to believe. And our opinions are based on that. So, in a way, what our morals are and our opinions are subjective based on influence. Principles are what actually are. This confuses a lot of people. And when I had to look this up to refresh my memory on this, because in my lessons in All in Jedi, I talk about principles in one of my points on my lesson plan. I had to go back and read it again and what the definition is. This caused me to think. Is what I'm teaching and what I am saying based on my own morals, or am I actually going on principles? And I believe that I am teaching and speaking on here mostly by morals. But I do like to also work and try to incorporate principles in this. So I have seen a flaw in my own process.
We've also had a discussion on principles versus morals before on here, and I think we were talking about the same thing.
We were.
We're just expanding on it now.
Yeah, but I think in this, we're looking at it in more detail, in a more detailed oriented way, and separating the two. And this may be a rehashing of something before. That things change, people change, situations change. So, in reality, principles are what we may have to actually go to and rely on. Our morals are our compass, and what we do and think, what we think we should do versus and how we may do it based on whatever belief system we were raised on, which can lead into an ideology of others that fall upon your same moral belief and the influence to that, right? So in Jediism, basically, we are all in this community on the same moral beliefs and want to change our morals to align with a different thinking and with thinking of others who have a community and for there to be a community. But this brings a problem. Potentially somebody from the outside who does not believe in this and wants to stick to their own moral values and moral principles of what they believe can cause great harm to.
Well, I mean, there are different areas of the Jedi community that there are different sets of morals that are adhered to, but the solid, the people who are in more solid groups that are less leaning towards an ideological perspective of you must be trusted and basically be with the vibe of the group. They have more of a solid standing on principles.
Right. Okay. But is that a moral standing or a principle or a standing on principles?
Principles. I mean,
Based
even
on
if you look at the Jedi codes, they're like a set of principles that most people will look at and they'll try to shape their lives by it. And then how they go about that, their beliefs about that will be their morals. But the foundational teachings will be the principles in which they base their lives on.
yeah, how we go about our day-to-day process and how we live is based on our morals. But when it comes down to a problem and how it should be dealt with,
then there can be disagreements because people have different moral beliefs, but the basis of what they're basing their decisions on usually, or at least should, be set in the principles in which they have founded their paths on.
okay, a good example here, okay, and that I know some people are going to disagree with me on this, all right, in one Jedi aspect, in morals, believing and leaning towards empathy and compassion, right? Those are more, those could be morally founded, right?
I think it also depends on our definitions of those terms too.
Okay. So, but also in the paths I work to practice is more on the gray path, right? Which will hold to a different set of morals and a different set of principles.
It also sounds like it has like a slightly different definition because someone might think compassionate is being nice all the time and doing things super diplomatically. But from another perspective, letting someone go through a tough time or even facing consequences can be a compassionate thing.
Yes. That is, compassion is to let somebody learn from their mistakes. Okay, but be there to help them when in need. Okay, and so the person does have to suffer a bit. Okay, I learned that also. I learned that same bit as compassion also. But however, on the other aspect, on principles of a great Jedi, if the suffering comes from others, then it shall be dealt with after diplomacy has failed in absolute, which means it's never going to go fairly. In principles, that would be the right way to do it in the gray aspect, which by the light Jedi, which I have nothing against, I still keep in contact with a lot of them. And I still support what they do. It helps me stay grounded. But that's where the disagreement happens. In the light Jedi, it would be to compassion to help this person and in an empathetic way to help see the error of their way. And that if they cannot be helped, just sorry, we cannot help you. Maybe you need to have a different way of going about this. Okay. Very compassionate. But here's ways that things you can look at and resources, right? To help you become better. And then when you're ready and you can work more along this ideology we have on our morals and principles, you're welcome back, right? The other aspect would be you are a problem, you shall be dealt with accordingly by your actions, because you cannot comply. And we have tried to be diplomatic with you. We have tried to find a solution. That time is over. Now, what you receive is what you've asked for. And if you suffer through it, so be it. That would be considered a very dark side action. Based on the principles of gray. We tried, it's like you tried, things were done to try to get the person to change what they were doing. Okay, and give them a chance to change what they're doing, which was compassionate. You pointed it out, it was not done. So therefore, by your choice, this is what shall come. And it cannot be changed. But on the other side, the patience and compassion and understanding will be worked with to no end. Patience, great patience. And I respect that. So you have two different morals and principles here, and in a way, two different ideologies. And we have to be careful not to mix the two up, where ideology versus morals, which can become principles. No. Ideology, morals, and principles are separate items. They are separate categories. Truth of the matter is, in one aspect, truth is, this is a problem. It shall be ended, right? That's a solution to cause things to become peaceful again. Based on principles, morals.
I think I always ask that question. And what would be compassionate?
Okay.
And the compassionate thing would be that there are consequences for certain actions.
Okay. So would it be to make the person uncomfortable to show and to be around?
So the compassionate thing would be to remove the situation altogether.
Okay. So one would be a more gentle approach, right?
A more gentle approach?
How the ethics would be applied, right?
Is that a gentle approach? I mean, there's still a consequence.
Well, ethics in an ethical way, we would look at it, it could be looked at like, let's do this in order for the person to save face, right? Give the person some dignity, right?
Okay.
On the other aspect, the person has caused great harm. So therefore, they do not deserve to be treated fairly because they've been unfair to others, right? Ask for what you shall receive.
Well, compassion isn't always fair.
Yes.
Compassion sometimes requires that there are consequences for interactions or actions or even boundaries that we have to set with others. But
Okay.
in that, it shows respect for ourselves and for the people involved. But people's, like, there still needs to be consequences.
Right. So we're talking about the mass as a whole, right? We're talking about the community as a whole here, right?
Yeah.
So what would be the best way to protect the community as a whole? A Sith would look at it like this person's done wrong. There is no excuse. And I agree, there is no excuse. If one has been shown the error, okay, and if they have chosen to not change that error, being shown the error is compassion. And to understand why they did it. However, if they do not change, they have chosen the path of their own destruction. The Sith would look at you messed up. There's no excuse. You're finished. Complete, absolute. You have no rights anymore. You are finished. You're done. However, the middle would be you have been shown, you have been given the chance. You chose not to. We don't care what your excuses are anymore. That time is over. And I think this is where the community confuses how gray Jedi look at things. One is a more gentle approach to ease someone out with dignity. On the other hand, the person that chose to not go out in a dignified way because they have shown no respect. So no respect shall be given to your demise. That does not mean that one arbitrarily goes around using this philosophy as an excuse to just do whatever you want and call it by this. No, there's no excuse for that. So, in principle, the right thing would be to solve absolutely. That it would be in the manner of which it would be done, which would be based on ethics. There's the difference. Ethically, how is one thought and ideology and moral standing is going to be, and the principles applied and seen versus the other ideology, ethics, morals, principles. And I'm glad I came back to this type of format because it's nice to get away from things and to see things from different perspectives, right? That opens one's horizons and causes one to think about where they may be straying from, okay? And to look at, because it's easy to teach something and to speak on something from one aspect, one one aspect, which we can use as what is factual, right? So this is where whatever your practice is, what are the principles realistically? Are they what you think the principles should be by what is actually the the truth, or are they based on what you think and may believe? This, I think, causes some confusion because part of the community, or the community as a whole, we all look at things morally different and base our ethics and principles on that. And I hope in this helps clarify and clear up the misconception. Okay. And even if you don't follow that path of practice, okay, that even in your daily lives, as a person that goes about what they live by morally, would still remember there's a difference between the two. Say, for example, okay, and I'm going to go by my own example, my own experience here, right? I used to be in the medical field. Okay. Compassion and ethics were a very big practice in that, and respect towards clients. Okay. Now, in a nursing home, it's understood that because of a person's challenges they may have mentally, emotionally, physically, right? However, if one continues to push their challenges as and use them as excuses to misbehave and break the rules, principally on principle, by rules set and agreed upon after a period of time, and the proper channels have been done, then on principles of the nursing home, that person shall be moved to another facility in order to maintain a good environment and a healthy environment for everybody involved. So, in a way, so really, one has agreed to those principles when they became a resident or a patient, which means as is. And people would confuse, well, on what their moral beliefs were. We should give this person more time. Well, the time has been given. So this is what we have left to do as far as recourse goes, based on what the principles of this facility are. So in actuality, there's no excuse. Compassion, ethics, morals have been applied in a reasonable way and realistically. And unrealistic would be that if this person was psychologically damaged to the point that that facility is ill suited, then realistically, on principles, that person should go to a facility that is designed for the care of that resident. Morally, that would be the right thing to do, and ethically, that would be the right thing to do. So, really, truly, ethics and principles are very closely related. Ethics are how they should be applied. So, also, would one say that principles are to say and dictate and how ethics should be applied? That's a question. That's a very good question. And quite frankly, I think the evidence that would be presented would say what would be the course of action. So, removing morals away from principles maybe looking at Jediism in a different way, maybe seeing it in a different way. Are we practicing this path on our morals, or are we practicing it on principle? And enforcing and practicing those principles themselves. Now, the Jedi community as a whole has a long ways to go. All right. That's a given and would be agreed upon. But progress has been made due to a certain group who is starting to oversee the correcting of those that would be to influence and mislead others, that would be to mislead others, right? Which I support this effort wholly. But I think in some cases, and believe in some cases, diplomacy has failed. Act in absolute. With resolve and decisively. Not everybody would agree with that. And there have been others that have tried to convince me otherwise on how I would see things. And frankly, it's all been taken into consideration, and I don't disagree with their aspects. But however, which serves each best? Which serves your life best? And chain of events in one's lives will alter and change how people see things. Okay. And may give a person a wake up call and how I've been doing this or how I've been living has been not the way to benefit me or those around me. So either way, compassion is a part of it. The principle would be what actually needs to be done. And Julie, I didn't mean to like take over here, but
You're good.
however, okay. And so that led me to this thinking of not that I doubt what I teach, not that I doubt what I say and believe in, but it makes one think, have I been acting on my moral beliefs or have I been acting on principle and teaching on one, confusing it for the other? And I think anybody that does teach should go back and look at this and evaluate it. If not, if you're unable to, then maybe the time to leave and stop teaching and maybe learning again and being that student full time again and stepping back, that may be the time. But we are all still students. So I think that actions and how something and we live and think should also be based strongly on principles. Because if we are falling short and we are failing ourselves, then principles are going to be that foundation that can correct us. What is the truth? Not what mine is, not what their truth is, not what a societal truth is. What is the truth? What actually is in reality, not the reality we want to make. And that's a very bitter pill to swallow. And it's very difficult to swallow that very jagged pill. It is needed in order to keep us grounded, to keep our thinking straight, to keep us aligned. So I did go over today on just the hour, which, okay, occasionally this happens. But on a lighter note, okay, I am hoping that those that have substituted one for the other may actually sit down and have a realization of the difference of the two. They are separate. They are in their own categories. But one, we do need to weigh out principles with our moral views. And it's nice to be reminded or just pointed back out. Which means that even when one is in a teaching role and teaching position, they are still open to have things pointed out to them, to keep them in the line. And I think any teacher that is always keeping that door open to realize a possible error and way is a good thing. That's still a good teacher. Still a very solid teacher. Actions show the character. And that's where I think principles also apply. And integrity with it. So, one thing I want to leave with each of you, as I like to do at the end of this, is sit down with somebody you truly trust, who's going to be honest with you, and ask and have that open discussion with them. And it be in care. Have I been screwing up? And if so, how? And then look back and listen to that person openly. And what they tell you may be what you need to hear. May not like it, but what you need to hear, which to help you to become a better person. Because we all fall short, but we need the reminder that remember, it is always done in care when they are true. So anyway, I wish all of you a good day, and may the force guide each and every one of you. Thank you. Now, Griffin out.